On Saturday, March 21st, credible reports confirmed that Iran and Israel traded direct strikes on each other's most sensitive nuclear installations inside the exact same 24-hour period. Natanz took the first blow early that morning. Then, just hours later, Iranian missiles slammed into Dimona, and only 3 days earlier, an unidentified projectile smashed into a building just 350 meters from Iran's Bushehr nuclear power station, the country's one and only active atomic power plant. Nobody has claimed responsibility, nobody has offered an explanation, and almost nobody is openly asking the terrifying question, what happens the moment the next round lands even closer? Over the next several minutes, I'm going to break down exactly how this nuclear tit-for-tat escalated step by step, and how dangerously close the entire region came to a full-scale radiological nightmare in the Persian Gulf. Appreciate you joining me right now. Drop your honest thoughts in the comments. Do you see any realistic chance of a ceasefire in the near future? Let me know where you stand. Iran's Atomic Energy Organization publicly confirmed the Natanz strike shortly after dawn. The Shahed Ahmadi Roshan enrichment facility, located roughly 220 kilometers southeast of Tehran, was struck for the second time since the current campaign. Codenamed by Israel as Operation Epic Fury and by the U.S. side as Operation Roaring Lion, it kicked off on February 28. Iran's Tasnim news agency, closely tied to the Revolutionary Guards, immediately labeled it a coordinated American-Israeli aerial operation. Western media outlets reported the use of heavy bunker-buster munitions. The Atomic Energy Organization called the attack criminal, accused both Washington and Jerusalem of shredding every international nuclear safety agreement on the books, and then issued the single sentence they needed the world to hear. No radioactive material has leaked. There is no danger to local residents. Read that statement again carefully. That is not a damage assessment. It is a containment reassurance. A government openly telling its own citizens and the international community that one of its underground centrifuge halls, packed with enriched uranium, just took direct hits from advanced ordnance. And the only good news they can offer is that radiation stayed inside. The IAEA was immediately notified. Director General Rafael Grossi repeated his urgent call for all parties to exercise maximum military restraint to avoid any nuclear accident. Russia's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova went even further, describing the strike as a flagrant breach of international law and warning of the genuine possibility of a region-wide catastrophe. Here's where the story pivots sharply. Israel's military issued a carefully worded statement saying it had no awareness of any strike on its. Notice the exact phrasing. Not a flat denial, not a claim of responsibility, but deliberate ambiguity. When the IDF wants credit, it takes it. When it wants to reject involvement, it rejects it. No awareness leaves the door open for the U.S. to own the operation, while giving Jerusalem maximum flexibility. We'll circle back to why that language matters once we reach Dimona. Natanz is no ordinary outpost. It forms the absolute backbone of Iran's entire uranium enrichment program. The site was already hammered during last June's 12-day war, Israel's Operation Rising Lion, Pentagon's Operation Midnight Hammer, and again in the opening phase of this conflict on March 2nd, when satellite images revealed heavy damage to at least 3 major structures. Iran has now enriched uranium to levels with zero legitimate civilian use. Western intelligence assessments put the current stockpile at enough fissile material for approximately 10 weapons, literally one short technical step from weapons grade. Every single bomb that falls on Natanz narrows the gap between a conventional military strike and a full radiological release. Stay with me, because the retaliation that came right after the Natanz hit is the part that should worry every viewer the most. Within hours, Iranian ballistic missiles slammed into Dimona and Arad in southern Israel, right beside Israel's premier nuclear research center. One missile achieved a confirmed direct hit on a residential building. The IDF itself verified the impact. Iranian state television didn't even try to soften the message. They openly called it payback for Natanz. The IRGC framed the entire salvo as legitimate retaliation. Dimona sits deep in the Negev desert and has quietly served as the acknowledged heart of Israel's nuclear weapons program. Ever since the Shimon Peres Negev Nuclear Research Center opened in 1958, Israel has maintained its long-standing policy of nuclear ambiguity for decades. Dimona is the reason that policy still exists. Most outsiders assume it is simply a civilian research campus. In reality, global intelligence agencies and non-proliferation experts universally assess it as the primary site where Israel assembled and maintains the Middle East's only undeclared nuclear arsenal. And Iran just dropped a ballistic missile directly into the residential area surrounding it. Casualty figures from Dimona rose steadily through the evening. Mag David Adam crews treated close to 40 people across multiple strike zones. A 12-year-old boy was reported in serious condition from shrapnel injuries. A woman in her 30s suffered moderate wounds. Others were treated for shrapnel, fractures sustained while rushing to shelters, and severe psychological shock. Paramedics described scenes of absolute chaos, collapsed buildings, and widespread destruction. Emergency teams were dispatched to at least 12 separate locations across the city. The IAEA released a statement confirming it had received no reports of damage to the nuclear research center itself and detected no abnormal radiation levels. That marks the second time in a single day that the IAEA had to publicly reassure the world a nuclear site had not been breached. 2 countries, 2 sites, same day. In the immediate aftermath, the IDF also announced an internal investigation into the defensive failure. Dimona is among the most heavily protected locations in Israel. Arrow and Iron Dome batteries are layered around the negative precisely because of what is housed there. The fact that a missile penetrated the envelope and struck a building in the immediate vicinity of the nuclear complex is not merely an operational glitch. It is a strategic vulnerability exposed in real time. It signals to Iran that the target is reachable, and it forces Israeli planners to confront a chilling internal question. If one missile got through on a day when defenses were presumably at maximum alert, what happens during a sustained saturation attack? We have to rewind 3 days to understand how the conditions for today's strikes were set. On Tuesday, March 17th, the IAEA confirmed that a projectile destroyed a structure only 350 meters from the reactor building at Bushehr, Iran's sole operating nuclear power facility. It is a Russian-built VVER-1000 reactor, rated at 915 megawatts, connected to the national grid since 2011, with 72 tons of fresh fission material and 210 tons of spent nuclear fuel stored on site. Those exact figures come straight from Rosatom CEO Alexei Likoshov. He warned that a direct strike on the reactor core would trigger a catastrophe of at least regional scale, exposing multiple Middle Eastern countries to radiation. He stressed that no side in this conflict would escape exposure. He also called for an immediate safety buffer zone around the entire complex, a clear signal of how close he believes the next strike could land. Many assume the Bushehr projectile came from the U.S. or Israel. High-resolution Airbus satellite imagery, analyzed by the Institute for Science and International Security, tells a different story. The debris pattern fans southward from the impact crater, consistent with the projectile approaching from the north, not from the Persian Gulf or any naval platform. That raises the deeply unsettling possibility that the strike originated from inside Iran. An accidental launch, a malfunction, or a misfire. No government has claimed it. The IAEA has not assigned blame, and no one seems in a hurry to investigate publicly. Satellite images taken a week before the incident also captured an unidentified 5-meter-long object sitting in an open field at the exact same spot. That object remains unexplained. Director General Guy labeled the event the reddest of red lines in nuclear safety. He told reporters that any accident at an operating power plant would be extremely serious, and that the risk of widespread atmospheric radioactive dispersal is very high if the core is compromised. Now consider what lies downwind from Bushehr, the massive desalination plants that supply drinking water to Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait. The entire Gulf's water infrastructure draws directly from the Persian Gulf. Any radiation release at Bushehr does not stay inside Iran. It contaminates the water supply for tens of millions across multiple sovereign states. Rosatom had already evacuated 250 employees and their families before the projectile struck. Children of staff were removed even earlier. A third wave of evacuations is now underway. Roughly 480 Russian personnel remain on site. Construction of 2 additional reactor units has been frozen. Russia formally protested to Israel via its embassy in Tel Aviv, reminding Jerusalem that the exact locations of Russian citizens had been shared in advance. That protest is far more than diplomatic paperwork. It is Moscow warning that any Russian death at Bushehr will carry consequences far beyond the Middle East. On the very same Saturday that Natanz and Dimona were struck, the Israeli Air Force confirmed a precision strike on a facility inside Malik Ashtar University in Iran. The IDF described it as a strategic research and development site used by Iran's military industries to produce components for both nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. The university falls under the Iranian Defense Ministry, carries international sanctions, and has long been linked to SPND, the Organization for Defensive Innovation and Research, the direct successor to Iran's documented AMAD nuclear weapons program that was officially halted in 2003. The IDF had already hit another SPND-linked laboratory near the Moj complex on March 2nd, destroying a building that satellite imagery confirmed was only completed in early 2025 and had never hosted IAEA inspectors. That detail is crucial. A brand new unsafeguarded facility taken out before international eyes could ever see inside. IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi stated the campaign is roughly halfway complete. He described the Iranian regime as battered, confused, and operating with severely degraded defensive capability. 22 days into the conflict, U.S. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper reported more than 8,000 military targets struck across Iran, including 130 naval vessels. A CNN satellite imagery investigation the day before revealed that 77% of 27 underground bases and 107 tunnel entrances had been bombed. Yet Iranian crews were already digging out buried munitions within 48 hours of each strike. The war grinds on. Neither side is collapsing. Halevi then added a line that carries weight far beyond today's battles. He referenced Iran's missile attack on Diego Garcia the previous Friday. 2 intermediate-range ballistic missiles fired at the joint U.S.-British base in the Indian Ocean, roughly 3,800 kilometers from Iranian territory. Neither reached the target. One failed mid-flight. A U.S. Navy warship fired an SM-3 at the second. Whether it succeeded is still unclear. But Halevi's real point was range. He noted those missiles were never aimed at Israel. Their reach extends to the capitals of Europe. Berlin, Paris, and Rome now sit inside Iran's direct threat envelope. Just 3 weeks earlier, on February 25th, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi publicly insisted Iran was not developing long-range missiles and had capped their range below 2,000 kilometers. The Diego Garcia launch doubled that declared limit in a single night. Iran's semi-official media later boasted that the new range exceeds anything their enemies had previously imagined. Hold every one of these events in your mind, because this is where the full picture snaps into focus. On the same Saturday, Iran fired 6 to 8 separate ballistic missile salvos at Israel. Fragments from one missile struck a kindergarten in Rashon LeZion, central Israel, leaving the building in ruins. The mayor stood in front of the wreckage and said that if it had been a normal weekday with children inside, the outcome would have been unthinkable. Israel's education minister immediately canceled all Passover camps across 18 municipalities. Defense Minister Israel Katz visited the site and labeled the strike a war crime. Meanwhile, Hezbollah continued its rocket barges from Lebanon into northern Israel. Homes were damaged in Metula and Safed. Drones penetrated Lebanese airspace while sirens blared across the western Galilee. By Saturday evening, another Iranian missile barrage hit the southern city of Arad. Magen David Adom declared a mass casualty incident. At least 30 wounded, several in critical condition. Zaka rescue teams reported people trapped under collapsed walls, many unconscious, outer building facades ripped away. That marked the second time in just hours that an Iranian ballistic missile had punched through Israel's defense layers and slammed into a populated southern city. And still, not one government involved in this conflict has spelled out the exact conditions that would actually end it. Every single nuclear safety red line that existed when this war began on February 28 has now either been crossed or come within 350 meters of being erased. The question is no longer whether someone will miscalculate. The question is whether anyone on either side has even drafted a plan for the morning after they inevitably do. Thanks so much for watching all the way through. I genuinely appreciate every single one of you. If you want to stay ahead of these fast-moving developments, smash that subscribe button, drop a like on this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Also, click the video popping up on screen right now for my latest breakdown on where this conflict heads next. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there.